Let's say, this DB has two departments. One is your like HR department. You have. Write another. We have like a managerial department. So this is individual. Department. I can also store in a different endpoint, like one endpoint, another endpoint. So that will come to picture this picture later. Okay, just now understand. We have a security system under the security system. We have endpoint and this endpoint it is capturing your connection. Who has the actual connection? Information, data. What is this URL? What is your username and password that is for the credential and what metadata like it required to provision user like your first name, last name. All this field value. It has right. So these field value right. It is captured in your connection and these connection it is hold by your endpoint first and endpoint it is holding by your security system. So how it happen? Like whenever I am trying to integrate, or, like this application is integrated, when I will try to force provision this ABC user. I want to give access to this DB application. What it will do? I have to submit the request for this ABC user once. I submit the request. Once I submit the request for this user, I will say I want to access this DB application. The system will say OK. You raise a request right once you submit the request as usual, right? So the request might be. If it is not a critical application, you can directly request to this application and you will get a request ID. Request ID, some number will get right, just for the tracking purpose. If it is a critical application, let's say so. This DB you cannot directly request. If you want to perform a request, right? It has two phases. First, it will go to approval of this ABC application manager. So if this ABC user will have a manager before that, this request will go to manager. So manager will review and see whether this person really required to this DB application or not, because this manager is right. His report is ABC user. Once he submit the request for this application in the real time, what happened first? Manager will review a request and he will see whether you are eligible or you really need the access or not. Once manager say, okay, you need the application or you need this, access again this request. Right, it will go to this DB owner application. So this DB8, this DB application, it has another owner. So this DB owner will see right. This guy is requesting for my application and his manager has already approved. So let me approve that after that, only your request ID some number will generate for you. So once you have this request ID, it will get right picked by your WS retry job. So this WS retry job you have to mention right in no I need access for this DB application. So you have to explicitly mention, I need the access to DB application and I need to provision the account which is created. That is new account. So once you provision this to new account right. So this new account will give, it will pick this task and it will process for you. That means once you process, the record is ABC user. It is getting onboarded to this application. ABC user will have an account here called ABC or capital, whatever ABC. So this account will get created here in the same time the account ABC. The ABC account. It is getting created in DB. Also save and store this ABC information in a separate table that is called accounts. Right. So it has a separate tables. It keep a record, a copy record, also in his own database so that it can identify if I have given access to this ABC application and where I have given the access each time. It cannot directly reach here, right? That is a time-consuming. So let's say tomorrow, ABC user will say, Saviynt, I do not have access to this DB application. So Saviynt will say, okay, let me check if you have access or not, so that it will go and see his own database, like account database, right inside account database. It will see if you have the access to the DB application or not, and it will say you have access. So it will say no, if you have access, or I don't provide it again. That is how this whole system work, right? So any question here? This is an interesting. No man. So you understand, right? How this WC tries to work and what is the use of security system and this endpoint. So it is clubbed together, basically. So WC tries up, it is performing the job and it is trying to process the connection. So let's jump into the practical scenario and see how it works. So now, so as it will write. We have an involvement of a security system. So log into your Saviynt. Once you log in. Right, you have to prepare a security system. So before going back, that right. So let's prepare our database first, where we are going to create the user right. Then we'll come back to Saviynt. So this is like we can create a new table here, right in under the JDBC app, which will store our provisioning information. So let's create a table. Write and give a name. Everything small. DB_account. So these the table name and what column we require. So remember for provisioning right. We require some of the mandatory column. So let's look into that, what kind of column we required, or the new value it is required. So if you see here in this document, just search for create account. So you see, create account parameter right. To create a new account in ASAE. Specify the value of the create account JSON parameter. So again, this will be placed inside your connector or connection. Right. So it is giving example to create an account using insert statement user similar to the following, so either you have it, two ways. But now this second way. It is not encouraged because it required database access, backend access in the real time. So store procedure. It is already gone. Nobody is using that. So just focus for the first point, that is, using SQL query, how you can do that. So here we are performing the DB create account JSON. So if you see, this is just a message that I am creating an account query and what actually information it is doing insert into users. Right. So in our case, what will be insert into this DB underscore account? ID is a mandatory column, right? Display name, email employee ID. First name, last name, system name, username and password right. And what value it is capturing, right? So it is getting the user. ID user display name. User email user. Employee ID user first name, username, last name, user system username and user. Username, so just have a look here. When we are provisioning this ABC user, right, this ABC user. Right. You got the information from this target application. Let's say your XYZ information, right. This database information. It has been already given to you by your application C. So your application team told right boss. This is our application and this is our URL, right? And this is our credential, and all this database information. But what value you are going to pass those also, they will tell right. The application team said I need the first name of the user. Last name of the user. An email ID of the user. These some of the attribute I need, so when Saviynt sending this ABC user or this ABC user is getting created, so Saviynt. All this ABC user details will be passed to here. So this ABC user has information like first name. Last name and email also, it has right. So we have to map this first name with this first name and this is last name with this last name. So I told you right, when from HRMS the user are the getting onboarded to Saviynt through a user import or a trusted reconciliation, right? The user is getting created here. But in backend it is storing under user table. Right, because the Saviynt is also a tool and it required a database. That's why it is storing this information in your user table. First, when I store this information in a user table for this ABC user. So it has value like it is. First name. Last name and email ID. All are stored in under your user table. So the table name is user. So now I am passing this first name, last name, email ID right to the target first name to the target people, last name and the target table email ID right. So I have to explicitly mention from which table I am getting the data. So for each and every table there is a user object that is object. So for user table the object name is user. So here I will say, user first name. That means so the system will understand. The first time it is coming for me from your user table like that. I have to mention. User last name. So that means I am getting the last name of this ABC user from the user table. Right. If you see back right. So this import user, we had record like this user record we inserted, and after doing trusted reconciliation, the user are created inside your Saviynt right. If I copy this ID I pass to the username attribute of your Saviynt. Let me copy this ID. And this is your Saviynt database right. If I search in the Saviynt database right, select Saviynt. Select username, first name from Saviynt users. Where username equal to this value if I give this right. It gave me the record right. So that means when I onboard the user from the JDBC application to our Saviynt database or to our, in the Saviynt tie, so it keep a copy in your user table. So the table name is users. Okay, so this is either table where all your user information is getting stored. But now we are sending this ABC user or this, username value. We are trying to provision to a different target application, that is, UXYZ application. So it will face the value from, user username, user first name, so like how it is mentioned here, right?